The man in this photo smiled for the camera, clipped his hospital ID to his coat, and walked into Riverside Medical Center on a Tuesday morning. He never walked out. But 8 years later, a surgeon's gloved hand pulled that same ID badge from inside a living patient's body. Not from a pocket, not from the floor, from inside the flesh. The operating room went silent. Someone gasped, because everyone knew that face. Everyone remembered his name. Dr. Elias Thorne had vanished without a trace in 2010, and now a piece of him had surfaced in the most impossible place imaginable. This is the story of how a missing person case became a nightmare, how a routine surgery exposed a dark secret, and how the truth was buried inside a human body for half a decade. If you want to know what really happened, keep watching. What if I told you that a missing doctor's ID badge was found inside a living patient 8 years after he vanished without a trace? Not in their pocket, not in their belongings, inside their body. This is the true story of Dr. Elias Thorne, a brilliant surgeon who disappeared in 2010, leaving behind a perfect life and zero clues. His case went cold. The investigation stalled. His family mourned in silence. Then in 2018, during a routine surgery on a patient named Marcus Webb, a surgical team made a discovery that would reopen one of the most baffling missing persons cases in medical history. They found Dr. Thorne's hospital ID badge embedded deep within Marcus Webb's abdominal cavity, surrounded by scar tissue, as if it had been there for years. The discovery raised impossible questions. How did it get there? Why was it there? And what happened to Dr. Elias Thorne? Dr. Elias Thorne was the kind of man people admired from a distance. At 42 years old, he stood at the peak of his career as a general surgeon at Riverside Medical Center. He had spent 15 years building a reputation that few could match. Patients requested him by name. Colleagues respected his steady hands and calm decisions during complicated procedures. Hospital administrators pointed to him as a model of excellence. His success wasn't just professional. Elias lived in a comfortable home in the suburbs with his wife, Caroline, and their 2 children, Emma and Lucas. Neighbors described the family as normal and happy. Caroline worked as a school teacher. The kids played soccer on weekends. The Thornes attended community events and hosted barbecues in the summer. Nothing about their life suggested trouble. Nothing hinted at darkness beneath the surface. Elias maintained a careful routine. He arrived at the hospital by 7 each morning. He reviewed patient charts over coffee. He performed surgeries with focus and precision. He ate lunch in the hospital cafeteria, usually alone, reading medical journals. He finished his rounds by 6 in the evening and drove home to his family. This pattern repeated itself for years without variation. People who knew him said he was predictable, responsible, and maybe a little boring. But boring meant stable. Boring meant safe. On the morning of October 14th, 2010, Elias followed his routine exactly as always. He kissed Caroline goodbye. He dropped the kids at school. He arrived at Riverside Medical Center at 7 sharp. Security footage showed him entering through the main entrance, ID badge clipped to his white coat. He stopped at his locker in the staff room. He grabbed his coffee from the break room. He checked in with the nursing station on the surgical floor. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. His first surgery was scheduled for 9. A simple gallbladder removal. The patient was prepped. The surgical team was ready. But when the clock hit 9, Dr. Elias Thorne was nowhere to be found. Nurses checked the break room. They called his cell phone. They paged him overhead. Silence. His colleagues searched the hospital floors, thinking maybe he had been pulled into an emergency. The cafeteria, the parking garage, the administrative offices. Nothing. His car was still in the parking lot. His locker was closed but not locked. His white coat hung on the back of his office chair. His coffee mug sat on his desk, still half full, still slightly warm. By noon, concern turned to alarm. Caroline received a call from the hospital asking if Elias had gone home sick. She said no. She hadn't heard from him since morning. She tried calling him. No answer. She drove to the hospital, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. Hospital security reviewed the footage again. They saw Elias enter at 7. They never saw him leave. It was as if he had walked into the building and simply ceased to exist. Police arrived by early afternoon. They treated it as a missing person case, though nothing about it made sense. Detective Sarah Mills led the investigation. She interviewed everyone who had seen Elias that morning. The security guard who nodded at him, the nurse who said good morning, the janitor who passed him in the hallway. Nobody noticed anything strange. Nobody saw him leave. Mills ordered a full search of the hospital. Officers went room by room, floor by floor. They checked storage closets and supply rooms. They searched the basement, the roof, the mechanical spaces between floors. They found nothing. No sign of Elias. No sign of struggle. No evidence of anything wrong. The investigation expanded beyond the hospital. Police searched the Thorne home with Caroline's permission. They looked for signs of planning, of secrets, of a reason to run. They found nothing unusual. No packed bags, no missing money, no hidden documents. Elias's bank account showed no strange activity. His credit cards hadn't been used since the morning he vanished. His phone last pinged from a tower near the hospital, and then went silent. Days turned into weeks. The case consumed Detective Mills. She built a timeline of Elias's last known movements, minute by minute. She interviewed his friends, his colleagues, his patients. She dug into his past, looking for enemies, debts, affairs. She found nothing that explained his disappearance. Elias Thorne was a man without enemies. He paid his bills on time. He had no gambling problems, no secret addictions, no hidden life. He was exactly who he appeared to be, or so everyone thought. The media picked up the story. Local news ran segments about the missing surgeon. Headlines asked where Dr. Thorne had gone. Tips poured in from people claiming to have seen him in other cities, other states, other countries. Police chased every lead. Every single one turned into nothing. Months passed. The investigation slowed. Without evidence, without witnesses, without any trail to follow, there was nothing left to investigate. The case went cold. Caroline and the kids tried to move forward. They held a memorial service without a body. Friends and colleagues gathered to share memories of Elias. People cried and hugged and wondered what had happened. But wondering wasn't the same as knowing. Emma and Lucas grew up with questions they couldn't answer. Where did Dad go? Why did he leave? Caroline told them she didn't know, and it was the truth. 8 years later, on a cold morning in January 2018, a man named Marcus Webb checked into Riverside Medical Center for surgery. Marcus was 58 years old, overweight, and suffering from chronic abdominal pain that had gotten worse over the past year. His doctors ordered scans and tests. They found a mass in his lower abdomen that needed to be removed. Marcus wasn't worried. He trusted doctors. He signed the consent forms and let the anesthesia pull him under, confident he would wake up fixed. The surgical team that morning included Dr. Jennifer Kwan, a capable surgeon who had joined Riverside 3 years earlier, and 2 assisting nurses who had worked at the hospital for over a decade. They prepped Marcus, made the first incision, and began the routine procedure of removing the mass. Everything was standard until Dr. Kwan's scalpel hit something hard. Metal. Inside Marcus Webb's body, surrounded by scar tissue and adhesions, was an object that had no medical reason to be there. Dr. Kwan carefully extracted it, confused and concerned. Foreign objects inside patients usually meant surgical errors, forgotten tools, or swallowed items. But this was different. As she cleaned away the tissue and blood, the object became clear. It was a hospital ID badge, scratched and discolored but readable. The photo showed a man's face. The name printed below read, Dr. Elias Thorne, Riverside Medical Center. The operating room went silent. One of the nurses gasped. Everyone in that room knew the name. Everyone remembered the surgeon who had vanished 8 years ago. And now his ID badge had just been pulled from inside a patient's body. Dr. Kwan's hands trembled slightly as she placed the badge in a sterile container. She finished the surgery on autopilot, her mind racing with questions. How long had the badge been inside Marcus Webb? How did it get there? What did this mean? After closing Marcus up and ensuring he was stable in recovery, Dr. Kwan reported the discovery to hospital administration. Within an hour, police were back at Riverside Medical Center, this time not searching for a missing person, but investigating what now looked like something far darker. Detective Sarah Mills, older now and worn down by years of unsolved cases, stood in the surgical suite staring at the ID badge in its container. She had never stopped thinking about Elias Thorne. She had never stopped wondering what happened that October morning. And now, 8 years later, a piece of him had surfaced in the most impossible place. The hospital went into controlled chaos. Administrators locked down information, trying to prevent panic and rumors. Staff whispered in hallways. The discovery leaked anyway. By evening, news vans were parked outside Riverside Medical Center. Reporters demanded answers. Headlines screamed about the impossible find. The police opened a full investigation, treating Marcus Webb's body as a crime scene. They needed to understand the timeline. Medical experts examined the scar tissue around where the badge had been found. Their conclusion: the badge had been inside Marcus Webb for approximately 8 years, give or take a few months. That meant it was placed there around the same time Elias Thorne disappeared. The connection was impossible to ignore. Detectives interviewed Marcus Webb as soon as he was conscious and stable. Marcus was confused and frightened. He swore he had no idea how the badge got inside him. He didn't know Dr. Thorne personally. He had never been a patient at Riverside before this surgery. 8 years ago, in 2010, Marcus lived 2 states away and had never set foot in this hospital. His story checked out. Records confirm Marcus had been living in Ohio in 2010. He only moved to the area 3 years ago for work. There was no connection between Marcus Webb and Elias Thorne that investigators could find. Yet the badge was inside him. Someone had put it there. The question was who and why. Detective Mills pulled Marcus's complete medical history. In 2010, Marcus had undergone an emergency appendectomy at a small hospital in Ohio after his appendix ruptured. The surgery was routine. He recovered without complications. But now, that surgery took on new meaning. Could someone have placed the badge inside Marcus during that operation? Mills contacted the Ohio hospital. She requested records, staff lists, security footage if it still existed. Most of the footage was gone, recorded over years ago, but the records remained. The surgeon who performed Marcus's appendectomy was a traveling contractor, someone who moved between hospitals taking temporary positions. His name was Dr. Raymond Voss. Mills ran the name through every database available. Dr. Raymond Voss existed. He had credentials and a license, but his background was thin, almost suspiciously so. She dug deeper, making calls, requesting documents, following paper trails. Then she found it. Hidden in old employment records, buried under careful layers of false information was the truth. Dr. Raymond Voss was an alias. The man who performed surgery on Marcus Webb in Ohio in 2010 was Dr. Elias Thorne. Elias hadn't vanished. He had run. He had created a new identity and continued working as a surgeon under a different name. The discovery changed everything. If Elias was alive and working, why did he run? Why did he place his own ID badge inside a patient? The investigation took on new energy. Detectives tracked Raymond Voss through employment records across 3 states. He worked short contracts, never staying long enough to build relationships or raise suspicion. He moved like a ghost through the medical system. Until 6 months ago, when Raymond Voss also disappeared. His last known location was a hospital in Nevada. He finished his contract and never showed up for his next position. He vanished again, just like before, leaving no trace. Mills studied the pattern. Elias had lived a double life for 8 years before vanishing a second time. But the badge inside Marcus Webb suggested something more. It was a message, a clue, maybe even a confession. But what was Elias trying to say? Forensic teams analyzed the badge for DNA, fingerprints, any trace evidence that might explain what happened. They found Elias's DNA, which was expected, but they also found something else. Microscopic traces of a rare chemical compound used in certain industrial processes. The same compound had been flagged years ago in an unsolved case involving medical supply theft and black market organ trading. The pieces started fitting together in a horrible way. Elias Thorne hadn't disappeared because of personal problems or mental breakdown. He had run because he was involved in something criminal. Detective Mills assembled her team and laid out the theory. Elias Thorne had been involved in illegal medical activities, possibly organ trafficking or black market surgeries. Something went wrong in October 2010. Maybe he was about to be caught. Maybe he was threatened. Whatever the reason, Elias faked his disappearance and reinvented himself as Raymond Voss. But before he ran, he performed one final act. He placed his ID badge inside Marcus Webb during the appendectomy. Why? Perhaps as insurance. Perhaps as evidence he could reveal later if needed. Perhaps as a guilty conscience leaving a breadcrumb. The theory made sense, but theories needed proof. Mills and her team focused on finding Elias Thorne, or Raymond Voss, or whatever name he was using now. They tracked his financial movements through shell companies and false accounts. They followed his medical career through falsified credentials and forged references. The trail led across the country through a network of shady medical facilities and corrupt administrators who asked no questions as long as the work got done. Elias had been careful but not perfect. He left tiny traces, a signature that matched his handwriting, a surgical technique that matched his training, small details that only someone looking very closely would notice. Mills found them all. The investigation also focused on Marcus Webb and why he was chosen. At first, Marcus seemed like a random victim, someone who happened to need surgery at the wrong time. But deeper investigation revealed a thin connection. Marcus had worked briefly for a medical supply company in 2011. That company had been investigated for suspicious orders and inventory discrepancies, though nothing was ever proven. The company closed in 2010, the same year Elias disappeared. Marcus claimed he was just a warehouse worker who knew nothing about the business side. Investigators believed him, but the connection suggested that Elias had chosen Marcus deliberately. Maybe Marcus had seen something at the supply company. Maybe Elias thought Marcus could identify him later. By placing the badge inside Marcus, Elias created a twisted insurance policy. If Marcus ever became a problem, the badge would link him to Elias's disappearance, making Marcus look complicit. The more Mills learned, the darker the picture became. Elias Thorne wasn't a victim. He wasn't a missing person. He was a criminal who had disappeared by choice and left chaos in his wake. But where was he now? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A hospital in Montana reported a surgeon who had applied for a temporary position using credentials that seemed legitimate but felt off. The hospital administrator was cautious and ran extra background checks. The credentials were excellent forgeries, but they were forgeries nonetheless. The photo on the application looked like Raymond Voss, but older, with a beard and glasses. Mills flew to Montana with the team. They coordinated with local police and waited at the hospital where the surgeon was scheduled to start work. On a Tuesday morning, a man matching the description walked through the hospital entrance. Mills approached him calmly, showed her badge, and said his name. Not Raymond Voss, not the fake name he was using now. She said Elias Thorne. The man froze. For a moment, Mills thought he might run, but he didn't. He just stood there, shoulders sagging, looking tired and old. He nodded slowly and said, "I wondered when you'd find me." Back in an interrogation room, Elias Thorne confessed. He had been involved in a medical supply theft ring that funneled equipment and drugs to black market operations. He wasn't trafficking organs, but he was helping those who were by providing supplies and occasionally surgical assistance. In 2010, the FBI was closing in. Elias panicked. He staged his disappearance, using contacts from the criminal network to create the Raymond Voss identity. The ID badge inside Marcus Webb was exactly what Mills suspected. Insurance. A way to implicate Marcus if he ever talked about what he might have seen at the supply company. Elias performed Marcus's appendectomy specifically to place the badge where it would never be found under normal circumstances. He never expected Marcus to need abdominal surgery years later. He never expected the badge to surface. When asked about his family, about Caroline and the kids he abandoned, Elias's face crumpled. He said he thought about them every day. He said running was the only way to protect them from what was coming. He said he was sorry, though he knew sorry wasn't enough. The confession closed the case but opened new wounds. Caroline Thorne, now Caroline again without the uncertainty, spoke to reporters briefly. She said she didn't know whether to feel relief or anger. Her husband wasn't dead, but the man she thought she knew never really existed. Emma and Lucas, now young adults, declined to comment. The hospital where Elias worked under his real name issued statements about improving background checks and security. Riverside Medical Center faced lawsuits from patients who felt betrayed. The medical community questioned how one man could operate under false identities for 8 years without being caught. Elias Thorne was charged with fraud, theft, conspiracy, and a dozen other crimes. His trial revealed the full scope of the black market medical network he helped support. Other arrests followed. The network collapsed. Elias was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Marcus Webb, the unwitting carrier of the truth, recovered from his surgery and tried to return to normal life. He gave one interview where he said he felt violated, used as a storage container for someone else's secrets. He never wanted to be part of this story. Detective Mills finally closed the file on Elias Thorne. After 8 years of wondering, she had her answers. They weren't satisfying answers. They didn't bring comfort to the family, but they were the truth. The case taught investigators important lessons about identity verification in the medical field. Hospitals across the country tightened their screening processes. Background checks became more thorough. The system adapted, trying to prevent another Elias Thorne from slipping through the cracks. In the end, the mystery of the vanished surgeon was solved not by brilliant detective work alone, but by an unlucky coincidence. Marcus Webb needed surgery. A badge was found. A secret life unraveled. The story became a cautionary tale in medical schools and criminal justice programs. It showed how someone with the right knowledge and connections could disappear and rebuild their life under a new identity. It showed how secrets buried deep could surface in the most unexpected ways. It showed that sometimes the people we trust most are hiding the darkest truths. Caroline Thorne eventually moved away with her children, seeking privacy and a fresh start. The house where they once lived as a happy family was sold. New people moved in, unaware of the history. Life continued the way it always does, but the shadow of what happened never fully disappeared. If this story caught your attention, consider subscribing for more deep dives into true mysteries. Until next time, stay curious.